If you're trying to make any kind of meaningful, effective change in your life, you've come to the right place. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am really excited to talk to you today because I was giving it some thought. And even though it's been 10 years since I wrote my first book, Common Sense Happiness, it is evergreen. And the principles apply just as much today as they did 10 years ago. And right now, I mean, especially right now in 2020, the year of crazy chaos, I think it would be nice to just have a little bit of a reminder. And, I was talking with my show producer, Christy Olson, who you are all going to meet here very soon. And we thought it would be fun to just take one principle at a time. There's 5 of them in the book, and just do a deep dive into them. Just give everybody a reminder of what they can do to keep generating some happiness in their life. So that is what I have in store for you today. I'm glad you're here. And hey, everybody meet Christy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me to We're Talking Shift for the first time. Really excited to chat a little bit about happiness principles. I have, of course, read Loree's book and a lot of breakthroughs for me in there. So I'm really excited to have an opportunity to pick your brain about it a little bit more.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I think this will be fun. I really haven't done a dive into my book on the podcast yet. So I think this is going to be fun. And I love the fact that you've read it and you're ready to share some stuff with everyone. And I look forward to your questions. This will be good to just bring it all up again. All right. So Christy, tell me, what was your first big aha when you jumped into the book?
Well, you started off even before we get into the principles with this great introduction that kind of encourages us to take responsibility for our own happiness. I really like the idea. I'm a bit of a control freak. We've talked about this. I like the idea that I'm in charge of my happiness and that the things that I do on a daily basis can actually, truly affect my life in the way that I feel. So one of those first questions that you asked, even in just exploring with people, was like, you know what? Let me just find it precisely because it is so powerful that I think it will really speak to people. And I just latched onto it immediately and thought to myself, I think a lot of people are mistaking maybe depression, especially right now, with just simply some feelings of sadness and not being happy. And I'm sure there's a big difference there, one that you can probably speak to as a holistic nutritionist and with your sort of expertise. Everyone isn't depressed all the time, right? Our words are powerful and we hear people describing themselves in that way, but what's really going on there?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, I think that there is an important distinction to be made uh, between depressed, like clinically depressed, and being unhappy. I mean, one is literally you should probably be under your doctor or therapist supervision. If you are, there are people that are, clinically depressed, and that is not what we're talking about here. There's a cause and effect thing going on here. And the cause is when you're stuck in a habitual way of thinking. So if you have pretty well got a pattern or a habit of thinking of things, situations, and experiences in a certain way that is negative and disempowering, then the effect of that is going to be that you are going to be experiencing negative emotions, right? You're going to feel sad, or you're going to feel frustrated, or you're going to feel disheartened. So that's the distinction. There is a lot of power that I think people just don't realize or haven't learned how to use within themselves, just simply by shifting their thinking. As you know, I always say that is the antidote to being stuck. So when you are stuck in a state of mind that has you thinking that you are depressed or sad, you actually might be doing yourself a great disservice by not utilizing the very power within yourself to move out of that state.
Yeah, and see, that's what really speaks to me so much about what you do, and your advice is that we're really taking it upon ourselves. And once you can acknowledge that responsibility, I think that can kind of pave the way, right? That can be the first step down a journey to being happier and feeling more successful and feeling more fulfilled. As I get older, I'm starting to realize that those things are all up here, right? Like they're not in your bank account, they're not on your IMDb page, like it's up here.
Right. No, that's a good way to look at it. They really are because you know, here's what I like to look at it this way. Happiness is it's not an experience. Happiness is a state of being, like depression. Happiness is a state of being. Happy is a feeling, like sad. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm stressed, I'm elated, I'm overjoyed, or I'm miserable. Those are all feelings, right? And feelings come and go. But a state has weight. It's a state is where you live. But an experience, like a feeling, that you feel that, but I don't live there. So you can still live in a state of happiness all the time, but within that state, you will still, as a human being, experience the ebb and flow of different feelings. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm really happy to hear you say that because I'm not a very patient person. So I get frustrated really easily just throughout my day. I try to keep a routine and I have all these things I'm taking my vitamins and I'm eating right and I'm doing all the things. And I just easily get annoyed and I start to think, if I get annoyed about something in the morning, I'm like, does this ruin my whole day? Well, I finally realized it doesn't have to. And I heard somewhere that emotions only last for like 6 seconds, but it's what you attach to it and all that kind of causes a problem for you throughout the rest of your day. And that's just something that I'm always kind of struggling with a little bit. It's like, oh, I spilled my tea this morning. Well, that does not make this a bad day. Like it's okay.
Right, right. Yeah, all you did was spill the tea.
Right.
So you can either attach a whole bunch of, negative feelings to that, like, oh my God, I'm such a slob, or oh my God, I've made a bigger mess for myself. I don't have time for this. This is stressful. I've ruined my carpet, whatever. You can attach all this stuff that is going to make you feel bad about it because those are thoughts that you're generating,
Right.
that you're applying to the situation. Or you can take away all of the feeling, because there doesn't have to be any feeling involved with spilling your tea. You can just look at it as, this is what happened. I spilled the tea. What do I need to do? Clean it up. Forget about it, move on. So it's when you sit and attach all the negative things to it, then you start generating the emotion. And then if you're somebody that has a tendency to dwell on things, and you start living, you literally, dwelling means you're living somewhere. That's what dwelling is. So if you're living in that state of mind, then you're generating the emotions that are associated with that. And so as long as you're going to live and dwell in that state of mind all day, then you're going to generate those kind of feelings and emotions all day. Make sense?
That makes so much sense. I would love to be able to just kind of, snap my fingers and like be like, okay, shake it off, get out of that. But I'm also someone who just thinks obsessively the same thought over and over again. Oh my gosh, this happened, this happened, this happened, or this person said this, they said this, they said this, and you hear it over and over in your mind. And how do you kind of just like leapfrog over the situation so you can move on or like get past those thoughts in your head? I mean, we know that they're not serving us. I know that thinking those things doesn't help me get through my day, but I still cannot help myself.
Right. So it takes practice, first of all, because if that's sort of your patterned way of doing things, if that's sort of how you've always been, you have a habit of doing that, of latching onto something, and then you have a hard time letting it go. So now what's happened is you have practiced being that kind of a thinker for your whole life. So now you're really good at it. So right, it's like anything else. The more we practice, the better we get at it. And that not only applies to things that we, skills that we want to have, but it applies to the habits that maybe aren't serving us well anymore, right? So in order to create new habits, you have to replace the old ones with better ones, with new ones, and then you have to practice them over and over. Now, one of the ways to practice changing your thinking is, first of all, you just have to become aware of what you're doing. So like you said, well, I know I'm aware of it, but I just can't seem to, get myself out of it. But I think if we back it up to the meaning that you're applying to the experience or the situation or the person, if you think about, yeah, but what do I want that to mean to me? Because from the meaning comes the conscious thoughts that you're going to start thinking over and over, and then from those thoughts you're going to generate the emotions. So if you go back it up to the cause, again, cause and effect. So if you back it up to the cause, which is, what meaning have I applied to this? So let's take your example. Somebody said something negative, maybe. They said this and that, and I just can't stop thinking about it. That really, bothers me or whatever. So you've attached a meaning to it that is something that is uncomfortable for you, that you don't like, that you don't want that. You want them to have shown up a different way, to have said something different so that you can feel okay. But that's not reality. This is what
No,
they
and it
did.
really bothers me that I can't make other people do and say the right things
I
too.
know, right? I mean, if we could just do that, everything would be fine. Damn. So I think if you've got to really get yourself to be willing to attach a new meaning to the person or the situation, right? You've got to attach a new meaning to it that you can feel more neutral about. Maybe you can't get to the place of feeling good about it, but maybe you can at least level up from a place of negativity and feeling bad about it. Maybe you can just level it up to neutral. And that way, it will be easier for your mind to stop gripping it so much. You know what I'm saying? So level up
Yeah.
to a different meaning. And maybe the meaning is, well, you know what? This person doesn't really know me that well. Or maybe the meaning is, I don't really have to be concerned about what that person thinks, because I know in my heart that that's not true, or that that's inaccurate. The people that know me well know that that's not true, or that's inaccurate. So really, do I have to feel like this about it? Do I want to give away my whole peace of mind right now for something that really I can't change or undo? Or would I rather just put it in a different place by applying a different meaning to it and move on?
Yeah, and that sounds like a big undertaking, of course. And when we're making personal changes, it's going to be. But also in your book, kind of the message was that it's simple, and you can practice happiness. And I know I can practice assigning a new meaning to things, like you just explained. But how do we do that? How do we practice being happy until I assume the idea is we practice it so much that we're just all of a sudden really good at being happy, right?
Well, yes, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
practice. That's true. It does take practice. I'm not going to say that it's not maybe going to take some effort, and that it might be hard, for some people, but it's not complicated. It is simple, but simple doesn't necessarily mean it won't be a little bit hard. It's going to take, it's like if you've never picked up a weight in your life, and now you're going to go into the gym and you're going to start lifting weights. It's going to be hard, and your muscles are going to be sore, and it may be so foreign to you and uncomfortable that you might not want to go back and keep doing it. But that if you will go ahead and keep trying, and if you're willing to keep practicing, that you're going to get past that discomfort, and you're going to start to feel better. Just like in the gym, you're going to start to feel better about yourself. You're going to start to get stronger. It's going to start to get easier. So you have to be willing to go the distance with it. And And you know what? If you want more peace of mind, if you want to move into that state of happiness, if that's really important to you, if you prioritize that, then you'll do the work. It's that simple. If you want it badly enough, you'll do it.
Wow, that's really powerful. Man, I'm thinking this is what you do the best, Loree, is to inspire us and encourage us to kind of take responsibility, for our own actions and our own happiness. And that's just really cool. I think a lot of, there's so much content out there right now, right? From coaches and positivity stuff. And a lot of it seems like just consume more of my positive speak and you will also become happy like I am. And I just really appreciate this approach that you're taking, that, we do have to do the work a little bit, but that we can really change who we've always been if we want to.
We can. And it really is a mind training. That's all it is. You're really training your mind, because that's where all of this stuff is being generated from. That's where your feelings and your emotions, that your emotions are energy. So, it's you've probably heard it before. Emotion is energy in motion. So when you're feeling happy, that's an energy. When you're feeling sad, that's an energy. They're just different vibrations of energy. They're just but they're all on the same spectrum of energy. So, the thing is, once you start doing it and you're practicing and you realize that if you change the meaning of some things that before made you feel bad, and now you feel a little bit better, that is something that becomes addictive, because feeling good feels good. And usually we want more of that, right?
Right.
I mean, not everyone. Some people
This
are
may
kind of
also be the
addicted.
reason why I drink too many glasses of wine sometimes, right?
Exactly. We have to be careful of what we get addicted to. But, right? But some people are addicted to feeling miserable. It's just a patterned way of being. Maybe that's what was how they grew up. Maybe that's what was modeled to them their whole lives, and they just don't even know that there's a whole different way to think about things and approach things. So, reading other people's positivity books, like you mentioned, I mean, the more of that you do, the more you'll see some of the core messages that, will start to sink in, which is basically, it all starts up here. It all starts with your mindset. It's why I always say mind your mind, meaning tend to your thoughts. That's what that means. If you tend to your thoughts and you start becoming very consciously aware of how you're thinking about things and people, the meaning that you're applying to those things, you can literally shift the way you feel that fast. So if you want to
I
feel
love that.
good, yeah. If you want to feel good, if you want to feel better, if you want to live in a state of happiness and not be subject to the, um, you know, ebb and flow of feelings, then learn how to mind your mind, and you will start to become a master of your emotions and be able to live in a state of happiness. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't still have feelings that, aren't good. Sometimes, maybe somebody you love dies and you're going to have feelings of grief. Maybe, there's some sort of a financial disaster in your household, and you're going to have feelings of stress and fear. But you can still experience those feelings and manage them much better if they're inside of your overall state of happiness, if that helps. Make sense?
It does, very, very much so. And I feel like we're kind of like knocking all the balls out of the park, right? Okay, we got this checked off and this checked off. We're going to think about things different. We're going to take a different perspective, and we can, be 100% in control. And then fear comes creeping in. Right. This is something I don't consider myself, like a fearful person. I kind of like to attack things and get out there. I'm kind of willing to try anything. But for me, there's always a little voice of like, what's everyone else going to say? What are people going to think about this? How are others going to respond to this? That's the fear that that keeps me from maybe moving forward or trying the next big, great thing for me. And I know that's a tough one. That's a whole nother can of worms, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. And also, what you say about basically what you're saying is the fear is, will what I want to do or say next be approved upon by others? Or is this going to, foster a reaction of approval or disapproval?
Right.
And since I think part of that is because we're, as humans, we're basically tribal by nature, and connection is something that is a part of it's one of our human needs, is connection. It's very powerful. So if we mistakenly, which I think is what we do, if we mistakenly believe that we're not going to be accepted by the group, or somehow we're going to be shunned by others, by our tribe, our community, then that's not good. That generates fear. But logically, we know that that's not really true. Unless you're, an axe murderer, then you're probably going to be, pretty well excommunicated. You probably shouldn't do that, because people are definitely not going to want to connect with you. They are going to isolate you because they are fearful. But beyond something ridiculous like that, I think that most people struggle with that kind of a fear. The fear of rejection, the fear of not being approved, by the people that matter to them. And even now, I think it's being more so now because of social media. We want the approval of everybody,
Right.
on the planet. And that's a terrible state of mind to allow yourself to be in. It's because you can't win that game.
Yeah, but I really like how you didn't just blame social media straight away. That explanation that we're tribal by nature, like that makes sense to me. So that's something I can go, okay, God made me to be, a group creature. And so it's okay that I want approval from, the rest of the tribe. I think so many people now just say, well, just get off social media. Social media is the problem. That's your problem. Just get off there. Just don't read it. Just, disconnect for a day or two. And first of all, I would love to be able to do that. I would love, love, love to be able to do that. Unfortunately, I can't because of my job, and that's something I've chosen, of course. But social media can't be 100% the problem. And I know that I would worry about what people think about me or what I do, whether they had, a place to comment on it or not.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not fair to blame social media for everything. It would be easy. Oh, it's that thing's fault, but really, we can use that as an opportunity to look at ourselves and look at the areas where we ourselves need to strengthen or grow or somehow work on within ourselves. So if needing approval, if you're finding that is an area that you're suffering from because you're not getting what you want, then that can be an opportunity for you to say, oh, this is something that maybe I need to work on. Fear of not having the approval of everybody under the sun, that's very disempowering. So what is it within yourself that feels you need that? Because really, we all know logically we don't need that. We don't really need any of the we don't really need approval from most people. We need a lot less approval than we think we do. I mean, there are certain things that are obvious. We have to, follow some laws and follow some rules, and be civil human beings. Those are, obvious things. But I think that, that kind of fear can just stop us in our tracks from doing some things that maybe we really want to do, but we're afraid to because of that. So that's when we want to really look at it and go, what is it in me that is so challenging about this, and how do I overcome that?
Yeah, is it like, what is my fear trying to tell me, kind of?
Sure. Sure. Because if that's if it's that, it's maybe it's an insecurity, or what's going to
Right.
happen if not, what's going to happen if, 500,000 people don't approve of something you just said or did. But what's going to happen if 1 million people do? I mean, how much do you need? So, so that's one way of looking at it. But I think the biggest point here, so we don't go off into the weeds too much, though, is fear. Fear can be your friend, because it can show you what you need to work on. And something like fear of disapproval, that's something that you need to work on, because you don't want to have that kind of a fear keep you from having or doing or being or saying something that you really want to express or experience.
Mhm. And you made a great example there of like a really easy pivot. Like, yeah, what if 500,000 people don't like what I do? What if 1,000,000 people do like it? With the second you said that, I went, oh my God. Well, that would be really cool. Like, I should get going on that thing that I'm thinking about right now, because yeah, what if 1,000,000 people do love it instead of everyone thinking it's stupid? So
Yeah.
that just seemed so easy and simple right there when you did that. But for some reason, that's just not the way that we condition ourselves to think automatically, right? Is that possible? Can I train my brain to do that all the time?
Sure. You know what that, yes. And sometimes, though, there's just always going to be a fear. And I think it's a fear that, I think it's natural. Most people have a fear of not having or being enough of something.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to have enough, credibility. I'm not going to have enough credentials. I'm not going to have enough information, or I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not going to deliver it in the right way. It's all that fear of not having or being enough of something. So if you want to, though, really experience your potential, then sometimes you have to take that leap or take that step in spite of the fear. You just get comfortable with the fear, and you can call it something else. You can call it energy, because fear is
Mm,
an emotion. And what do we say emotions are? They're energy.
right.
So, for me, I still do things even before I do a podcast like this with a guest or something. I get like, oh, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to ask the right questions? Or am I going to be able to, carry an interesting conversation and bring value to my listeners? So there's always this little nagging thing and my heart starts to beat a little bit faster when we jump on. But in my mind, I frame it not as fear. I frame it up. I repurpose it as energy, and I just call it energy and excitement. And I think that for some people, that energy that when we automatically call it fear is something that we want to resist. We want to go away from that. We don't want that. But if you call it instead energy, then you can say to yourself, well, this is energy that I am going to focus on a specific task at hand. And I can be excited about that, because the result, the effect of this could be something really great.
Wow, that really speaks to me. I find that really empowering because I can think of an example in my life where I do that. Like, I always think of myself as someone who doesn't get nervous. I know that because I was nervous one time in my entire life, and I know how that felt. And so I just always say, like, I don't get nervous, thank God. I've been in front of people and,
Yeah.
in dance and speech and all those things for so many years that's one fear a lot of people have that I don't. And, before a big event or something, or I'm going on live somewhere and people say, are you nervous? I'm always like, no, I'm excited. So I can kind of acknowledge that and go, oh, I've taken whatever a lot of people get wound up about nerves and being nervous into like, oh my God, this is happening. It's finally here. It's time. Let's do this. I can't wait. So when you, explain fear that way, I go, oh, I've done that with nervousness. So, now I can do that with other aspects of my fear.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the resource to that you have within you to transform what some people would say nervousness into excitement. That's the same skill, the same resource that you would use to transform your fear into a positive energy. Right. But so I have to ask, are you willing to share what the one thing was that you got nervous about? One thing in your life? I'm like jealous, and B, I'm super curious.
I am comfortable sharing this with you, Loree, because you are a former model. The one time I was nervous was when I competed in a beauty pageant, which was something I had always wanted to do. This was many years ago before kind of the feeling about pageants changed, right? And I still found it a very positive and, kind of life affirming decision that I made. I'm so glad I did it. But that, of course, involved putting on some high heels, getting in a bikini, and strutting your stuff on stage in front of all the pageant moms, in front of everybody, all the other contestants' families and friends, right? And my mom was there to support me as well. But I just remember being there with the lights on me, as I have been a million times when I'm speaking, but not having a microphone in my hand, and my legs wouldn't move. I just thought, oh my God, like I can't move my legs. And this is what people mean when they talk about being nervous and being paralyzed. And I, of course, finally got going, and I went a little too quick. I was rushed because I think because of that nervousness and maybe just wanting it to be over. People who know me well will tell you I'm not the type to prance around in a bikini, no matter how hard I've been working out. So that was the one time. And that's how I know, because I've never experienced that before or after, but I certainly now can identify with people who do, and I understand how difficult that really is to get over. And I really admire people who go and get out on the stage and do things even though they do get nervous.
Right, right. Well, I can relate to that. I did a pageant. Oh gosh, I'm sure it was like 25 years ago, maybe longer. I don't know. It was like Mrs. Georgia or something like that pageant when we lived in Atlanta. And I get it. I was so insanely nervous. I didn't experience it, didn't show up the same way it did for me, like it did for you, where I was frozen on stage for a minute. But how it showed up for me was I couldn't sleep the entire night before the pageant. So I was so
Oh
exhausted because
no.
my nervousness, the fear of, am I going to do something wrong? Am I going to say something wrong? How am I going to answer these questions? All these unknowns, and having the spotlight on you was so frightening to me that I couldn't sleep at all the entire night before. So I was exhausted going, I still went out and did my thing and, whatever, obviously I didn't win.
Well, obviously I didn't either. Didn't even crack the top 15.
And I was so relieved when that was over. Like, okay, I don't think I'm cut out for this.
And I've
But
kind of been able to laugh about it since then, but even now thinking about it, I almost got annoyed. It's like I couldn't get past the nervous part to get myself into the part of the competition where I could have spoken and
yeah,
answered questions, and that's where I really could have shined. But my fear on the aspect of it that I wasn't confident in really cut me off, and I wasn't even able to get to that next point where I would have been confident.
yeah. And that is so key right there when it comes to doing anything that we find, fearful, that we're hesitating. If we could just just have some faith and take that leap and know that it's going to get you to the next place where maybe you are going to shine, maybe you are going to do even better here. It's just part of moving forward. And then the other thing is thinking about what's the worst that can happen if you stumble, or what's the worst that can happen if you don't, if it doesn't play out the way you want it to. The worst that can happen, that's what I've taught myself, and that's what I talk to so many of my clients about, is we have to talk about, but what is the very worst that can happen? And can you live with that? Can you be okay with that? Are you going to burst into flames? Is your head going to spin off your shoulders? Uh, what is really the worst that can happen? And usually when we think about the very worst that can happen, if we can get ourselves to be, well, that's actually not so bad. I could really probably deal with that. Okay. It makes it a little easier to take the risk.
Okay, so we shouldn't worry about going too far down that rabbit hole. Like I worry that if I put my focus on what's the worst that could happen, maybe I'll get caught up in that and get to thinking that that is what will happen.
Yeah, no, because you're not dwelling on, okay, this is going to happen. What you're trying to, I think what you're trying to think about is, because not everything is going to pan out the way you want it to all the time. I mean, there are just, that's just life. We might have something we want to do, a goal or a project or something. And then there's that thing that is causing us to hesitate. We might not get the outcome that we want or that we envision. It happens all the time to everyone. It's just, that's just life. We don't get to control every single aspect of every experience, especially when there's other people involved, because we don't get to control other people. So I think that if you think about, but can I live with, it's not I'm going to spend time envisioning the worst that can happen. It's just getting real with, really, is the worst that can happen so bad that it's going to prevent you from taking the risk? Or now that you've named what is the worst thing that can happen, are you still willing? Is it worth taking the risk to move forward?
I get that. I get that. And I see how if we combine it with the other thing you did before about how we think about the really best thing that could happen, that could be really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Good.
So that's great. I feel like, all right, we knocked fear out of the park. Like we are so running the bases on our way to a home run of happiness. Where does stress land in all this? How does stress kind of take us off our path, or stress feels like something we can't control in the same way that we can control our feelings? Because stress feels like something that's happening to us, not something that we're making happen. But that can't be right? Because we're taking responsibility for our own actions.
Yeah, exactly. So stress is usually self-imposed. Not always, but it is. I mean, there are situations, and then depending on how we decide we're going to react to the situation, we're either going to put ourselves in a state of stress or we're not. So stress, again, I think that stress comes from resistance. So resistance, again, is a reaction. So, and it's a reaction that is, I think it's like a negative reaction. When you put yourself in a state of resistance, the tendency is to be defensive, because whatever is causing you stress, you feel like you're somehow being attacked, right? And so naturally that puts you in a state of being defensive. It's negative and it's closed off. So that's all resistance. If you have less resistance, if you are just willing to be okay with what is, and you have less resistance, now you kind of free yourself up to move out of that area of whatever it is that's causing you stress, or to manage it in a way that's more healthy and less stressful. So it's kind of like, if you think of what are those toys, the Chinese finger trap. It's like those little tubes that are made out of bamboo, and you put your index fingers in, right? And the more you pull apart, the more stress, the more it resists releasing you, right? But if you just stop resisting and pulling and and not liking it, and you just relax, then you can just slip it off your fingers and go on to whatever else you want to go on to, right? So that's what I think stress is like. I think that the more that you allow yourself to be in that state of mind of resistance and hating and just being so uncomfortable, the harder it is for you to actually find a solution or find a way to manage your emotions so that you can better deal with whatever the situation is at hand that's making you feel like you need to be stressed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm wondering too, I think coming from the holistic world and stuff, you must have some really great ways of relieving stress, or things that you've seen that have worked really well for your clients over the years. Like, would you have some specific suggestions, especially right now, if people are stuck at home a lot or are dealing with taking on roles they've never had to take on before? Right? Parent slash teacher, work from home slash whatever, all the other things that people have to be doing now. How can we manage that just on a day-to-day?
I think one thing we can do is to practice responding to the situations going on in your environment rather than reacting to them. And I know in the dictionary, the definitions to responding and reacting are quite similar, but I like to think of them differently because it evokes a different action. So when we are reacting to something, we're literally acting again. We're we're coming at something from in a way that we've come at it before, because we're creatures of habit. So if if there is, let's say there's squabbling and bickering and arguments going on at home, because right now everybody's kind of stuck at home for the most part and trying to deal with new schedules and no schedules and all that comes along with um, a pandemic and a lockdown. So we have a tendency to keep doing, to keep talking to the people in our environment the same way, and responding the same way, especially when there are triggers and stress points. So that means you keep getting the same result, right? Because you react, you keep acting, it's a do-over, over and over and over, and people never seem to really find a solution out of that. I like to say respond. And to me, when you look at it as, if you differentiate that in your mind, to me, I say respond. And I, I kind of qualify that as meaning responsible correspondence.
Ooh, I like that.
So that's how I sort of separate them, because when I think of responsible correspondence, it gives me pause to, to stop and think about, well, what would that be? So rather than a knee-jerk reaction and, coming at somebody the same way you always have, I'm going to pause and I'm going to think, what is the responsible correspondence here? Because correspondence doesn't just mean written communication. Correspondence also means harmony and interaction and connection. So if I want to have harmony, then I need to connect and I need to interact in a certain way that's going to promote, you know, peace and a solution. And that is obviously much less stressful than everybody having their own knee-jerk reactions. So that's one way. Change your
That's a
reaction
good way.
to change your reactions to responses, and think of that as what would be a responsible correspondence in this situation. And that way, rather than escalating negative emotion and tension, you are de-escalating and moving toward harmony. And doesn't that seem like it would feel much better, right?
It
so
does.
so that's one thing. I think another thing is to literally, if you feel that you can't even do that, sometimes we just have to walk away and go have our space. And just, for some people, you might have to go hide in your closet or your bathroom for a few minutes, but you need to change your state, because now you're in a state of stress. You're in a state of negativity. So to get back into a different state, there are certain things that we can do. Music will change our state. Any kind of physical activity will change our state. You could literally turn some music on and say, all right, everybody that's in this room with me, we're having a dance off, whatever. You can do, you can do things that will instantly change the energy in the whole room, just by you making the effort and saying, I'm going to do this. So maybe you're going to disengage and you're going to go and maybe you're going to talk to God, or maybe you're going to meditate, or maybe you're just going to take 10 deep breaths and calm yourself down. Maybe you're going to, look at some affirmations that maybe you've stuck on Post-its up on your bathroom mirror and remind you of what you're trying to do in your life. I mean, there's a million ways to do it, but changing your state can be done with the things you say to yourself. And if you can't talk yourself into a different state, you can put music on, because that vibration can change your state. Everybody knows that music makes you feel a certain way. So, put something on that makes you always feel lighter, makes you always feel hopeful, makes you always feel better in some way. And then you can change your state by meditating. It's not for everybody. You can change your state, but if it works for you, but you can change your state by doing something physical, a walk, deep breathing, deep knee bends. I mean, anything physical will help you change your state. So if you really want to change the atmosphere, the energy in the room, then you be the generator of it and you go do something that causes a change.
I love that. I love that. The music thing, I think specifically, that's great advice. I know for myself, how I talked about getting a little bit too wound up in the mornings and letting that all kind of spiral down. I know if I put on something called like meditation music, it's on YouTube, it's on iTunes, you can get it anywhere. There are videos that are like 8 hours long, and just throw that on my TV and I'm hearing like spa music basically throughout the day, that it just is a lot easier for me to just keep myself calm rather than like blasting the empowered female rap that I usually love to listen to. That just maybe isn't the right vibe for like 7 a.m. when I'm trying to work.
Exactly. I mean, if everybody's in a state of anger and upset, you don't want to put, probably headbanging music on. So, right. And you don't want to maybe put something on that, always makes you feel sad. I mean, common sense says put something on that somehow has a feel good vibe to it, and allow yourself to move into a different state. But you have to be that's so key. You have to be willing to loosen your grip on the state that you're in and allow yourself to move into another state. Because sometimes, people, they get a little bit stuck, and it's such a natural way to be in a state of misery or a state of anger that they kind of don't want to let go of that. So you really have to be willing to say to yourself, is this really what I want? Does this really make me feel great? Having this attitude. So willingness is a big part of it.
Wow. And that kind of, I think, lends perfectly talking about, cranking up the music and make everybody have a dance party in the room to change the energy a little bit. Reminds me of the last kind of thought here in your first principle of how to be happy. You say, bring your happiness and completeness to the dance with you. That I think is really powerful. It was a great way to kind of bookend the chapter for me having read it. Can you elaborate on that or explain that a little bit to the people listening?
Yeah, I think, when I wrote that, my thought was I have been hearing a lot of you complete me. I've been hearing a lot of my soulmate and you complete me. And I thought, not to knock those things, but I kind of feel like, we don't need to pair up with somebody because we are looking for someone else to fill voids in us. I think that is a mistake that a lot of people make. And feeling like you're not already full and whole and complete, and that you need another person to do that is a kind of a dangerous state of mind to be in. And it's puts a burden on another person that shouldn't be put on them. So it doesn't mean that you don't come to the relationship with an open mind and willing to consider that you will have things that you're going to learn from each other and teach each other. That's not the same, though, as showing up feeling like you're already whole and complete within yourself, and you're not looking for that outside thing to fill an emptiness or a void in you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense, and probably easy for us to understand because we spend a lot of time away from our significant others, right? So for me, I've kind of had no choice but to make sure I'm whole on my own. But I know that must be very difficult for others.
Sure. And I get it. Eric traveled constantly. So we didn't have months and months and months when we were apart, in our earlier part of our marriage when our kids were young, but we had continual, like at 50% of the time when he was on the road. So I was pretty much at home, managing the household and the kids a good 50% of the time for quite a few years. And I could have sat around and, moped and been like, I'm going to be, bored until my husband comes home and can, entertain me and give me stuff that I feel like I'm not getting right now. That would be a mistake. And you know what I mean? So spending the time filling myself up with the things that made me feel like I was learning and growing and, doing things that I thought would be supportive of my own, journey, and also at the same time, the family. And that way, when my husband came home, I wasn't leaning on him to somehow give me, I wasn't burdening him with something like he had to now come home and give all of this emotional stuff, because I wasn't able to figure it out myself. Does that make sense? I know it's probably a much deeper conversation, but
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's kind of what stood out to me about your book was that, you didn't study how someone else told you to be happy and regurgitated in this book. These are lessons that you've really learned through life experience and what really has worked for you and has made you feel fulfilled and happy. And I think that's probably why it's so powerful.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think I appreciate that. I think when I show up with all of myself intact and the other person shows up with their self intact. So we've got two wonderful entities, and then together you make this third thing, which is called, the relationship that you have, that it all comes together. Then they're separate, but they're one.
Mhm.
So, everything we can stand on our own, but together, we are showing up in a way that we're each bringing all of ourselves to the dance, which is a wholeness. And then we have this awesome third thing, that we create together. And I think that, I don't know, I think thinking of it that way is kind of magical. And it's, and nobody has to feel like they are lacking anything.
Wow, that's great. I think we have fully covered principle one of common sense happiness. I feel like we've given people a lot of work to do, but also simple. And it's exciting when you think about really taking control of your own happiness and making the changes we need to make and sort of creating the life that we want to live.
Yeah, it really is in our own hands. And even I think to round this out, even if you are in a situation, a predicament that you are really uncomfortable with, and you really don't want to stay in that situation or that state of mind for the rest of your life, seriously, you don't have to. If you just stop resisting it and just learn a few of these techniques, whether they're from Common Sense Happiness, my book, or there are just thousands of other amazing works out on the planet that will help you understand that with a shift in your mindset, a shift in your thinking, and just learning a little bit more about sort of the cause and effect of how things are unfolding for you, you really can start to shift things in your life for the better and start to move into that state of happiness that is way better than a state of gray.
That's great. There is enough gray out there these days anyway. We don't need to bring any more of it into our own lives.
I agree. So that probably wraps it up. Good for one day. I hope that by talking with you about this, Christy, that was really fun and interesting.
This was super fun. I love the idea that I can, read a book and that I get to pick the author's brain a little bit. Not everyone gets the chance to do that. So I appreciate it. And I'm sure people are going to want to get the book now. For those who don't just get a signed autographed copy sent to them by the Loree Bischoff, Humble brag. Where can people get it at?
Sure. So you can go to my website, loreebischoff.com, and that'll take you there, or you can just go right to amazon.com and pick it up there. So it's not hard to find. And yes, that's, let me know if you guys read it. I would love to know your feedback and your thoughts and your comments. Hey, we're talking shift. Let's go out and do it. Go get the book, pick it up, and I promise you, you will shift your life, even if it's just a little bit of a start. I know that you will. Please take a minute to subscribe if you loved what you heard today. Share it. Don't be greedy. Share all the good shift with everybody that you know. We want to spread it, all the happiness around. So until next week, stay feisty, my friends. Stay healthy. Stay happy. Go make some epic shift happen in your life. You too, Gary B.